Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bevvies with the Boys. My name is Munchables. I'm joined by Dagda. We are the boys, and today for Bevvies, we are joined by Kobe and Azael, two legends of League of Legends esports. Both of you guys ex-pros as well in different categories.
True.
I want to
Both
give you
washed,
guys
both ex-pros.
yeah, something like that. I want to give you guys an opportunity to kind of introduce yourselves a little bit. I think everybody obviously is going to know who you guys are, but what we usually do at the start of an episode is give everyone an opportunity to kind of say hello, and then we'll take a little trip down memory lane with you guys, if that's all right. So welcome to the episode, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. And
You're welcome.
how are you guys doing? How's the off season been for you guys?
It's been really fun. I mean, the off season, I always really like the time where preseason everything gets shaken up and everyone's on the hunt for the next broken thing. And I get to have fun with the super broken thing for like 2 weeks until they figure it out and they nerf it into the ground. Like I became a Kane main for 2 weeks straight. Going through Kane. I was all over the place. I'm like, this champ is so fun. Oh my god. Boom. He gets the axe so hard.
Yeah.
But then you just move on to the next broken thing. You always got to have backups ready. But I really enjoy that pattern, especially because, like Azael was saying at the beginning, we're both washed up. So if I want to get high rated again, I gotta have.
You need the advantages.
You gotta have the edge.
That was broken, but not broken enough that they nerfed it in time, so they let it through. So I can try and get high rated at the beginning of the season, take my screenshot, and peace.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Off season has been fun. Yeah, it's been nice to relax. I mean, Worlds is always a pretty big grind, I find. And the league season is. Yeah, I mean, for overnight, it's horrible, honestly. Yeah, you're like, going into cast at like 1 a.m. or whatever, and going till morning and stuff, right? You get there, it's dark. You leave, it's morning time, and you're supposed to go to bed. So I always find Worlds to be a pretty big grind on overnights, and the season's really long because really League goes like 11 months of the year, right? If you're doing the international stuff, and you're doing, especially if you're doing content and stuff for off seasons and whatever, this is kind of like the one time of year where I have more time to just chill. So I definitely had been playing a lot of preseason, and then Shadowlands came out, so I've been playing less preseason and playing some WoW, and that's fun for me because it's just like League for me is so intertwined with work now. So if I'm playing League, I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about casting, I'm thinking about LCS and all that stuff. So it's kind of fun to be able to play some single player games or play some WoW or whatever, and it's just like brain off, just gaming.
And I do just want to quickly hit on Shadowlands there. You mentioned it briefly because I know some people. I already know the answer to this one, but how much of the Shadowlands have you been playing? Are you climbing the ladder in Arena? How's that all been going?
I've been playing quite a bit, and yeah, I'm definitely climbing. I'm almost 2,400 first week, so that's pretty fun. Like top 100 or so, or something like that, and 2,600 MMR, which is pretty high. So it's been fun. It's been fun playing with some of my old teammates and stuff. I'm playing with Sea-Doo, and like one of his teammates that he was the guy I was sponsored with when I was still pro. And one of the guys that he's currently sponsored with is doing the PvE World First Race, so he's too busy. So I get to sub in as the washed up ex pro, and play some games with some really good teammates and some really good friends. So it's
washed up, still top 100 though.
That doesn't sound that washed up to me.
The game on a different class.
I try my best. But I'm playing an easier class, right? See, like before it was like rank 1 in the world on Warlock hard class. No,
just
top 100.
Every warrior has just been dissed.
I mean, if they're denying it, they're just in denial. So I don't know, man. Warrior is pretty straightforward, but it's a lot of fun. It's I like playing WoW. It's a fun game for sure, especially when you're playing with friends.
Yeah. It definitely seems like the kind of game that's just caught everyone up together. Because like the amount of, like I've seen like Cutie Pie and Scar and all of them are back together, all playing Shadowlands. It just seems like a nice game to just everyone will play and just join in together with.
That's the key.
Yeah. At the start of expansions, that's why it's so much fun. Everyone is playing. Like I don't play most of the time anymore, right? Kobe doesn't play most of the time, but Kobe's in there at the start. Like all kinds of LCS pros are in there at the start. Old friends I used to play WoW with for like 15 years are in there at the start. Like everyone jumps in if they're big into WoW, usually at the start of expansion. So you have like a month or whatever where everyone's playing.
Yeah, and I've even like my judgment of expansions. I know a lot of people, they're always looking at like the beta and like, oh, what kind of new systems and are they pruning abilities, or are they adding abilities, or what's it going to be like? My memories of expansions are almost all just about who was playing and who I got to play with, and then when they quit. Because like I every single expansion I end up quitting when I don't have people to arena with, or you don't have friends playing, right? MMOs are all about how many friends you have playing. And for this one, I even got a whole bunch of my friends that have never played WoW to become addicted to WoW. So that is really fun, because they're like fresh, and they're like, oh my god, like I never knew it was so fun. Now I get how people get sucked into this, and they're on there trying to grind, but also trying to do like transmog runs and like farming mounts and like all these different random aspects. And so I think that's really cool.
They're asking you
Have you
to
guys
go
played?
run the raids that you've played like 1,000 times 10 years ago. Yeah, I played an absolute.
Everything.
I tried
Boatload,
Classic
wow.
when it first came out, and I had like great fun with it. But I got to like level 30, I think it was. It's just like, this is such a time sink. Like I need to do actual work.
You should try Shadowlands leveling, because by comparison, it takes like so much less time. Like you can go 1 to 50 now in 6 hours. Like,
Wow.
and you can go 50 to 60 in like, I mean, that's a really fast pace. But even if you took twice as long, it's not that bad, right? You can progress very quickly. And like 50 to 60 is like 10 hours or something. So it's definitely a good time for new people to get in the game, and it's always fun playing with new people, like Kobe's saying, because it's like it's just everything is like new and shiny, and it's new experience. Like I was playing last year. Joanne, my wife, was played with me, and she'd never touched an MMO before, and it was just like really fun for me to play with her, because like things that had just become so passe for me were so exciting for her, right? It was like, we turn in some quest and get some like shitty green reward, and she's like, this looks, she's all excited. It's like, new clothes.
4 strength, 4 stamina, the belt.
Yeah.
The first dungeon I tried to do on Classic, I had no idea what I was doing. And I just ran in, like, I did the full Leroy Jenkins. I was just like, we're going for it. Let's do it. This is going to be great. Instantly wiped, and everyone was dead. I was like, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm so old. I'm such a boomer of games. I remember when Leroy Jenkins actually came out, and then when that was real time. It's so long ago.
Oh man, that is a long old time ago. I played since Burning Crusade, and I think I stopped just before Legion. I played a little bit of Warlords, and then I gave up at that point. But the thing about new expansions to me was always that it would bring the same friend group I had back together for the new expansion. And every single time, without fail, we'd make a guild and then very quickly realize how dysfunctional our friend group was. Because, like, instantly you got people flaking. People, like, old arguments would spark up again when it comes to loot and all this other stuff. And then the guild would collapse in, like, 2 months. And then we'd all actually go and find guilds that would actually work for us. But it was the same story every single expansion.
That's funny.
Yeah. WoW is definitely one of the games that I think brings all of esports together. I think most people in esports have at least some experience with it. I do want to go a little bit down memory lane with you guys, though, and kind of talk through the starts of your careers a little bit, because it's something we've done on a few of our episodes, and I think it's something that a lot of viewers find really interesting, because one thing I've noticed is a lot of the viewer base in League of Legends esports these days is much newer than I think a lot of us give it credit for. And so some of the stuff that I know about your guys' histories, a lot of people might not know where you actually came from, and the fact that you guys have been pros in League and other games. So I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to kind of give us some of the cliff notes of what your story so far is within esports, and how you got to the position you guys are in, because you're kind of at that legendary status as commentators within esports. So Kobe, we'll start with you if you want. Do you want to give us kind of like the step-by-step of how it all happened?
Step by step. All right. What first step do I start with then? Do I start with like
when your mom and dad met each other?
Yeah.
Play.
I
think my first competitive rivalry was obviously with my brother. I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger, so it was like he wasn't so young that he couldn't like understand the games or play the games, but it was 3 years. It was big enough that I would win everything. And so like my competitive history started out with just winning everything all the time versus my brother. And then there's even like just like fighting games on Nintendo 64, like GoldenEye, super far back. But like if you jump forward to college, where I came in as like one of those players where people always talk about Smash Bros. Melee of like, oh yeah, you're the best in your friend group. You think you're hot shit, and then you go to like your first tournament and you just get dumped on. Like that was my experience. And so I was like, all right, I'm done with consoles altogether. I'm not a console gamer. I'm out of there. And I started playing. I think Warcraft 3, like just like the regular mode, and then we started getting into all the custom maps and stuff with my friends.
Yeah.
And that of course led to Dota, which is MOBA World. And we did, when League beta was announced, it wasn't even live, when my friends brought it to like our friend group, and they're like, oh, we should try this, because we all like Dota a lot. And I tried it a couple times and we all hated it. We're like, what is this little baby cartoon game? All the champions are big, the map is small, you can't creep deny, you can't block, you can't do any of this stuff. There's no like
lose gold when you die.
Exactly. I was like, this is like going backwards. We're going into the kiddie zone here. It's so we all quit. But then eventually, like, we would always go back and play some more and some more and some more. And then since it was in beta, and there weren't that many people playing, I quickly rose to the top, and that brought back like memories of just like always winning. I was like, I like this again. That's a good
You're back
feeling.
in Melee again. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was just, you find yourself winning in queues like that at the top. You will always face the same players over and over and over. And so then I start to develop relationships with all of the players at the top. There are those people that you recognize that you hate, and those people that you always want on your team, like Big Fat Gigi. And it was literally, League of Legends at this point would get to like the top game of the highest MMR would be which team was Gigi's team. Like, which team did he have his squad? Because he would bring in. At this point, there were some players from Korea that were playing on the NA server, because there was no Korean server at that point, obviously, or Chinese server. And so there were these some mixes of those top players. And eventually, I'll just skip forward a whole bunch. This is going to take a super long time. Hotshot, as well as GG and Chowster, and Elements, and we made CLG. And at that time, this was in the very old days of competitive gaming, where you would literal win mouse pads. I think I got like 4 laptop heaters or coolers, excuse me. Heaters.
Laptop heaters.
4 laptop.
It was April Fool's.
Yeah.
I won 4 laptop coolers from the same tournament. They were like, we're out of the other stuff, so how about a whole bunch of laptop coolers? And I was like, what? Wasn't the other stuff like a processor and something
God.
sell at least? But we would play, like Newegg online tournaments, or or random other things that would pop up. And we would still be super excited to win. Like, I get a bunch of RP, or just random computer parts or something. And then I got, as season 1 is approaching, I get kicked from the team. I get benched for St. Vicious, which I was super pissed about at the time. But it took me like a month or something to get over, where I didn't talk to them for a while. But then they ended up taking me with them to season 1 World Championship anyway, because they felt bad. So I still got to go to DreamHack and got to go to the place. I skipped over WCG 2010. That's where we actually won, which was technically a international competition, but again, there was like no Korean server and stuff. So there were Chinese teams, and there was Southeast Asian teams and European teams. But we won that, and that's where I got to meet Mark Merrill and Brandon Beck. And we got a gold medal for North America. I don't know. Maybe there's like an IEM championship or something that North America got, but it might be the only.
Yeah, TSM won IEM, right?
Yeah, TSM won the IEM one against Brock Tigers or something, wasn't it? Or,
yeah,
Coup, I guess back then.
Yeah. But basically, me playing on CLG made a lot of connections within Riot, because the company was so small at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they announced they're starting the LCS, I had quit by that time after I got benched on CLG for St. Vicious. I graduated college, and I was working in as an industrial engineer for 2 years. Found out I hate regular life desk work, and I would always go to the tournaments and complain to all my old league friends about how I need to get back in somehow. And so when they announced LCS, I was like, I'll be an announcer then.
Bingo.
How about that? Because I was already doing on the weekends announcing for TSM invitationals for Reggie and stuff. So yeah, that then LCS, that was 2013, and it's been, you know, over 10 years now of a straight LCS.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah. For me, I mean, mine is kind of spread across some different games and stuff. But I mean, I grew up playing games and everything. You know, I really got into WoW in high school. And you know, I had played like StarCraft Brood War a lot, and Counter Strike, and Age of Empires, and all those kind of games growing up. Played Dota, played, you know, always was into a lot of multiplayer games and playing online. You know, the first thing I really did play like a lot though was WoW. And you know, I got into that. I started doing when Arena came out in TBC. You know, I got like rank 1 in all the different modes, and you know, did all these things and started kind of getting recognized a bit. Started competing in some online tournaments, but like in the early days of WoW Esports, Canadians weren't allowed to compete in tournaments.
What?
So like
That's insane.
the first BlizzCon, for example, I don't know, some sort of rules that they had. I remember the
Oh,
first BlizzCon was
no.
like a 2v2
All
mode,
right,
right?
the rules, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like based on population, each battle group, because it used to be divided up into your different battle groups,
Yeah.
like different servers essentially. You know, X amount of teams at the top of 2v2 ladder qualified to this online qualifier thing. So we qualified to that, and we were like 200 LP above second place. I'm like, BlizzCon is like for free. Like we're gonna win for free. One you have to try. And I didn't get invited, even though we were the
Oh
first
my
place team by like
God.
so much. I guess because I was Canadian, I guess. The next year, same thing happened. It was like a 5v5 mode. One qualifier didn't get invited. It's like that was like my early esports experience, was like feeling like I could go to these things and win, but never getting invited. And
Was your first character Warlock? Sorry, what did you
Yeah.
start as Warlock? Okay.
Yeah. I played a warlock at. Well, I mean, not my very first at level 60, but like in arena it was. I played a warlock at the end of 60 and did Nax and all that, and PvP'd a lot and battlegrounds and stuff, and was so excited when arena came out. But it was like, so that was happening, and then it was really funny because I was on a 5v5 team. This was like season 1 or season 2 or something. And 5v5 back in the day, like a competitive arena is 3v3, but like 5v5 was considered like the cool mode back in the day, so that's why everyone played. And my team that I was on booted me off because they didn't want a warlock. There's this team that was really famous way back in season 1. I don't know if you remember this, Kobe, but like called Pandemic, and they were like the most famous WoW team, right? But all the tournaments were invite only. So like I didn't think they were that good, but they won every tournament at the start. Because there was like no one could just show up and play against them. You had to get invited. So they released this 5v5 video, and everyone thought they were hot shit, and they were playing the same composition that we were, but with a mage instead of a warlock. So my team kicked me off to get a mage because they're like, well, Pandemic's running this, so we gotta run this. So I get fucking pissed. So first I make another team on the same battle group, and I take rank 1 from my old team. Then I transfer to the battle group where Pandemic is, and I take their rank 1 too. So the team that my team was copying, I take their rank 1 as well. I'm like, fuck you. And I was playing with one of my first teammates and we 4v5'd them. Like one of the first games we played against Pandemic, who's supposed to be the best team in the world and all of this. One of our players DC'd, and we beat them 4v5. And
no way.
Yeah. And this was back in the day where you could still like global chat, like you could talk to each other in the arena. So we're like talking trash and stuff, because I think the first game we queue up, we get them, we lose. And some of the people I was playing with like knew this team, so they like came in like our Ventrilo or our TeamSpeak or whatever the hell we were using back then, and start talking shit and being like, well, Warlock, like why would you play with that? You guys are trash, blah blah, like you'll never win with the Warlock. And then so the next game we have a DC and we 4v5 them, and we're all just spamming LOL Warlock in the arena. And one of my teammates made a PvP video about it, and this was back with Warcraft movies, like you talked about the Leroy Jenkins thing. And this video kind of blew up for 5v5. It's like we just smashed the best team in the world 4v5, and like we just continued to like farm them the whole night. So it's literally just a video of us just beating this same team over and over and over and over. And so like I kind of got a lot more recognition from that, because I was supposed to be the best battle group, and I got rank 1 in all 3 brackets there. I ended up getting sponsored. The first team I got sponsored by turned out to be like TLDR, like scammed me pretty hard. Well, or like basically we're like kind of like a fake sponsor. Like they had all these things on their website about like, oh, we're sponsored by this and that and all these different things. And it was called Frag Dominant, and they told us we were going to go to this MLG. MLG announced that was having WoW, so they were going to send us. They told us they had our plane tickets and everything, and like for weeks before the event, we're like, so could we like get the flight info or like what's up? And then like a couple days before, they finally admit that they never bought tickets. They don't even have tickets, and they're like, oh, but like we have the money, but it's like stuck in our bank or something. But like we'll pay you back though or whatever. And we kind of like knew we were getting screwed at that point. But just like my two teammates were lucky enough that their parents could pay for their flights. And so like I went to my family, and my family didn't have like a lot of extra money or anything, but they knew that like I'd been like really into this and like wanting to go so badly for a long time. And like for a couple months before MLG, it was like all I was doing was preparing for this tournament. So my parents kind of like scraped together some money to send me. And I was kind of at that point, I was thinking, all right, well, I'm going to go to this one tournament, and then that's going to be it. Right. And then I'm like done with esports. And this was back in like the end of 2007 or maybe it started 2008 or something. And so I was like, well, I guess that'll be a cool experience. That'll be it. And we went, and we, there was teams from Europe and the best teams from North America, and we won. And we won the first tournament, and then, we got offered a sponsorship by Evil Geniuses. The owner, Alex Garfield, back then, came to me and said that they wanted to pick up a WoW team, and they were just basically going to pick up whoever won that tournament. And we won that first MLG, so got sponsored by them. Was with EG for like 7 years. Won a lot of tournaments, won a world championship, got to a lot of esports stuff with them.
Even got flights paid for.
Yeah.
Seriously, can you imagine that mindset though of, yeah, I'm just going to go to a tournament and buy whatever team wins? Like that is mind-boggling nowadays. Like I'm just going to go to Worlds and pick up damn one because they won.
Yeah,
just...
yeah. It was just like most of the teams, like it was so low money, right? So it's like it's just it was a different world. I remember when we first got sponsored, it was just like the sponsorship was they would pay for our flights and our hotels and give us like free peripherals and stuff, and that was considered like an insane sponsorship. Like the whole pro scene was like jealous as hell of the sponsorship, that like we were just getting flown around to all the tournaments because they would fly us everywhere around the world for the tournaments, and get us a hotel room, and we're like all packed in one hotel room, right? But like that was considered fucking awesome. And later on, when we started getting a salary, we were like the only team in the world that was getting a salary at that point. So it was like it's not like people were making a lot of money from this. The only reason I made any money really was because we were winning tournaments, and I was like making stream guides or like boosting people in arena or like doing other things on the side, right?
I think that's one of the big like differences for a lot of the new fans and people growing up now, is like there are people growing up now in the world of these giant salaries. We have announcements where Perkz buyout is, I don't even remember what Jack was saying, like
3
just
million,
the
5
buyout
million.
alone
It was
was almost
insane.
5 million. Could you even like put that side by side with what we're saying, like the world that we grew up
winning
in?
mouse
Like,
mats.
Think about the hotel room you could get for that. Like, give me nuts.
I mean, it's really crazy, right? Like, when Jensen, there was like the league salary thing for him, it was like 1.4 million or whatever. I was looking at, it's like 100 and some thousand per month that he's making, right? The most I ever made per month as back then was 1,500 a month, and that was like the highest my salary went, and that was doing like casting and streaming 40 hours a week, and competing as a pro, right? It's just a completely different world now. But like, I loved it, and it was for me less about making the money and more about like getting to go all these places and kind of doing what I enjoyed. And I thought, hey, maybe this can get bigger. Maybe I can do something later. And if not, I'll go back to school afterwards, right? Because I went straight out of high school. I didn't go to university. But there always just kind of ended up being more opportunities. And in 2010 was the first time I cast something. I was traveling there was some sort of like promotional stuff for sponsors we had to do after a tournament. There was like an MLG, and then for BlizzCon qualifications, it's like the top teams like online, then get invited to like qualification realm or whatever, basically, and then the top 2 teams from that, or no, top 8 teams from that went to like a North American finals tournament in person, and then the top 2 teams from that went to BlizzCon. Is basically how it worked. So like we were doing this promotional thing, and then basically I had like the last weekend out of like a couple week long qualification thing online to try to qualify for the actual live tournament. So I get back, and every team that was high rated, what they would do is as soon as we would log in a character, they would add all our characters to friends list. And then as soon as we would log in, they would log out and they wouldn't play. And so like we couldn't play against any high rated teams. And then what they started doing when we just were like, all right, well, we'll just play like 1,000 games and we'll just win a point a game from all these low rated teams. So then what every team started doing is these teams that were, say, like, I'm just making up ratings, but say they're your 3,000 MMR team, they create new characters, they get to 2,000 rating, and then they chain queue. So like we basically end like leaving games to lose on purpose to other teams to keep their rating low. So we'd basically have to beat them like 30 times for every one game we lost to gain rating. And then these are other like top pro
Holy
teams.
crap.
So we got within like, I don't know, 3 or 5 rating or something of qualifying, and we lost the game, and then it was just like GG, right?
That's
We're just
fine.
done. So I was so sad. I felt terrible, first of all, that like I had been traveling doing the sponsor stuff and we weren't going to get to go to BlizzCon, and like I felt like it was my fault and we got really screwed. Um, but I like really wanted to go because BlizzCon was like such a big deal and it was so cool to like see my friends there and all this stuff. So I was trying to think of how I could go, and I reached out to some people at Blizzard and I was like, well, do you guys need casters? Because back then they would just have like people that worked at their company who like didn't even necessarily PvP or like have casting experience really, would just like be the casters for BlizzCon, even though it was like there's 30,000 people there watching it, but like
Which is
they
that's
just couldn't even.
another sentence that now just does not translate.
They're
You could
actually
not
standing
just
up around the office. All right, who wants to do it?
yeah.
Like they would have, Lore, who was one of the community managers and like had a YouTube channel and stuff, but like he didn't really PvP, right? It's something against him, but he didn't really PvP, he didn't really know it. So he would be casting. So they said, yeah, I could go. And I cast there, and I loved it. I actually had a lot of fun. I didn't really think I was gonna enjoy it. I think I got maybe $400 to like for like the whole BlizzCon event or something. Not a lot of money. Especially now when you're thinking about stuff for like essentially a world championship, right? Like one of the biggest gaming events in the world. To get $400 for going there, and I had to be there for like a week with the flights before and after. But anyway, I really enjoyed it, and I still wanted to keep competing as a pro. But one of the things that like did benefit me was because stuff was kind of like more antiquated and janky back then. Everyone wanted me to cast after that, and I was like, well, I'll only cast if you still let me play in the tournament. I'm not just going to cast. So if you want me to cast, you have to let me do both. So I would start doing like online tournaments and stuff, or like even some LAN tournaments where like I'll play my games, and then as soon as my game finished, I'd just start casting the other games.
Mhm.
And
It's very
I had a lot.
FGC. That's
Yeah,
exactly how that
So
works over there.
it was a lot of fun. I started doing that, and then I eventually went and lived in the StarCraft 2 programming house for EG, because I was like really into StarCraft, playing a ton of
I'm
StarCraft
so
2.
jealous. I'm so
Um,
jealous. I love those guys.
and so I went and lived there because to cast the like I can't even, I think it was a guy named Orb who was going to cast their team league. And then there was some like controversy where like he had said some really racist stuff and he got fired before like, and they needed someone like right away, and I was like, I like casting, I could do this, and like send us a VOD. So like I cast the StarCraft game and sent them, like, all right, you're hired. So I think I was maybe getting $500 a month for casting 6 hours a day, 6 days a week of StarCraft. So like way less than minimum wage, of casting like full time, right? And I was also still doing WoW Pro stuff at this time and casting WoW tournaments. So it was like literally all I did ever was esports and casting. Like there was no free time in my life ever. And I did that for like a year and a half. After that, I started casting Hearthstone and stuff. And it was just like to make enough money to get by, you really just had to do a lot of stuff, right? So I started casting Hearthstone. I got to cast Hearthstone at BlizzCon and do a lot of, different events there and stuff. So, for me, really, I've just been casting a lot since 2010 and cast for a lot of different titles. And I think it was about 2015 when WoW EG dropped our WoW squad, not to pick up another WoW squad, but because they wanted to spend more money on Dota 2 roster. And then after that, it was like, well, my salary pays for my rent. I don't know that I want to do this just off of like hoping that I get enough Twitch subs and things like that, because Twitch was so much smaller back then, and it wasn't Twitch Prime and like all these things that like make people a lot more money. So like even with a couple thousand viewers regularly, I was making very little money from my stream. And so I decided I was just gonna like try to get a more traditional job. And one of my friends that I had played a lot of WoW with, worked at Riot and suggested, I apply to playtest. So at first I applied to esports. I got rejected for an esports position. It wasn't even casting; it was something else. And then I ended up getting in at Riot to playtest. I did that for a while. And then I think LCS, I guess it was like, was it when you guys were going to an extra stream, or you just needed more casters for some reason? I don't even know.
Honestly, I can't even remember at what point you joined. It
This was
must
like
have
2015.
Just like showed up
2016.
at the studio at some point.
it must have been when we did like the format
The
change.
double stream. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
It must have
But
been that.
yeah, like Jack reached out and stuff, or someone reached out and basically that they needed casters, and if I wanted to do it, and I was keen. I was kind of debating between doing that or just continuing along more traditional career path. And I basically kind of thought it through, and I was like, well, even if I don't end up liking the casting thing, I can probably go back to what I'm doing before. And if I do, if I pass it up, I probably can't get back in later, or maybe not as easily. So started doing analyst desk and that sort of stuff, and eventually started full time. I think the next year, but for a while I was basically doing like both jobs. Like I was coming to store meetings and doing analyst desk on weekends and stuff. So I was just like working 7 days a week for like I think 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And then because I was still doing my full time playtest job. But so it was like actually like a relief when I swapped over finally, because it was like, oh my god, I have days off, like this is wonderful.
Yeah.
But been with LCS for a long time now. Yeah, like 5 years or something like that, 4 or
That's
5, I don't know.
that's actually making me remember like the decision point that I had, because like I was saying, when I was working as an engineer for 2 years and casting TSM tournaments on the weekends. So it's like, okay, you're working 5 days a week at an engineering position, and then on the weekends casting and basically working 2 more. And I don't remember how much they paid me, but it was,
Not a
yeah,
lot.
it was
Spoiler.
definitely not a lot. But I was doing it because I'm like, I am unfulfilled. I'm so sad at this job. Like I did all, my parents are like, or especially my dad is like, you did all this work to get your degree. Now you're an engineer. You have the engineering position. Like this is what you do. That is life. Like you did it. You're done. You made it. Now you
Yeah.
like you're
Do the
you're
thing.
good. Get out of there. But like I would always like I was saying, go back to the esports events. Like I remember so clearly the IPL events, and especially IPL 4, and just seeing all my old teammates and seeing all the old players in it and complaining to them about real life work or whatever, and wanting to get back in somehow. And my dad pushing so hard to be like, all right, you have made the separation, but always complained to my mom. And so I had this big decision point where even when the LCS was announced, they only offered me at first, I believe it was a 6-month contract. So I would have to quit my job up in the Bay Area, that was a senior engineer position, and move down to Los Angeles just for a 6-month contract. And my dad was so hard against it. He was pissed. Like he started yelling at me. But my mom was like, could tell that I was so unhappy. And so she was like, don't worry, I'll take care of him. Like go. Um, and so at that point was actually one of the biggest, like scariest decision points, because like Azael is saying, like this is the difference between no money esports, which is going to make you happy, or traditional career path. And especially it being just a 6-month contract, like even that little bit was so scary. And the fact now that it has turned into 10 years of basically of LCS almost,
So we
is
make more than $500 a month now.
it's so crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Now my dad's
little
happy.
bit.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I do it all along. Great move.
So how far down the line did it take before your dad got on board? Like what was the turning point
Honestly, after my mom like calmed him down and stuff, and after I'd moved and I was gone, I think as soon as I got the like conversion over from the 6-month contract to I think the first one was just like was a full year after that. He was like, okay, he'll survive. Basically, at that point, he was just worried about that. Up until then, he had continued to like literally send me job postings of engineering job postings. Like he would just keep sending me these.
By the way,
yeah.
Just in case.
But he was trying to be nicer about it because my mom had like talked to him. But there was no way I was going back after that. I mean, Azael's stories are also making me remember my favorite part of playing was when we did go to WCG and seeing your teammates and like a lot of them for the first time ever. Like I had played with these guys for sometimes like 15 hours at a time online, and like you have a really good strong friendship and you've never even met them in real life, and then like to all go on this like adventure, all going down to some tournament in Los Angeles is like some big thing, and then you go through this event together as like you're trying to overcome something. And I still to this day think that winning the day that we won WCG, even though like league was much smaller esport and everything, like that process of going through the tournament with my team and going through the adventure and then the feeling of winning is the best thing that I've ever felt in my whole life. And now I'm just missing it so much because we're in COVID, and like that was also something in casting. Like our casters, like a group of friends, it goes off and we would travel to the tournaments to be able to cast
Worlds
in.
at 3 a.m. alone in your room ain't the same.
It's
It's definitely different because it's like you're saying, like you first time you meet your friends. For me, like a lot of times when you go to like BlizzCon or something like that, and you meet friends you've never even seen a picture of them before. Like you don't even know what they look like.
You had like a mental image of what they sounded like, and then it's like totally different to what they actually look like.
It was like the other thing I think for me about like a lot of the old school esports stuff that like made people who were in it like want to keep doing it so much and be okay doing it was like today like esports is so much more mainstream, right? Like you have tournaments with like BMW and like Louis Vuitton and like these elite corporate sponsorships and stuff, and it's like back in the day when people would ask me what I was doing, like I would like not only would people not understand it if I tried to explain it, I was embarrassed to try to explain it because it's like when you're in your early 20s, the first question that literally everyone asks you is like, are you going to school? What are you taking? Right? And I wasn't.
And so next.
So like I was embarrassed, and it was always awkward for me. Like you go to a party, you like meet friends, you meet someone, like that's the first question that anyone asks you, right? And you try to have this thing where you're trying to explain it and no one gets it. No one like really understood it back then. And so like that was always a struggle for people who were in it. And then you'd go to an MLG or you'd go to an IEM or a DreamHack or a WCG or a BlizzCon, and everyone got it, right? You didn't have to have that like awkward conversation because everyone was feeling the same thing, right? Everyone was really into it the same way you were. And that to me is like what made me love esports and what made me love those events, was just like that feeling of community and connection with these people that like I didn't even know, because it was just kind of that acceptance that it's like we're all here for the same thing, right? Like no one's gonna ask me to explain why I'm at BlizzCon, when they're at BlizzCon.
No, they're gonna come up to you and be like, "Holy shit, you are rank 1 Azael!" Like
literal
like
world champion.
The early esports parties, by the way, were so ridiculous. Like it's
50 dudes in a hotel room.
But like, and then you have that level, and then you have like once Twitch parties started happening, and like Twitch started getting bigger, and then there started to be like some level of money. Like I remember, so I don't know if Curse is even still a thing, but Curse Gaming, they used to do like a lot of ads on their website, and
that's how I met Kobe.
I still to this day don't remember the night that I met him.
Can I tell that story?
His story
sounds like a good party.
Yeah,
his story does sound probable to things that I would do. But like the crazy thing at these points too was like I was like close friends with the owner of Curse, who Bear, and he ends up becoming like this giant. There are these millionaires that are just like floating around that are gamers that are like excited, and so many people are having some of their early experiences, like meeting and partying with other people that are like-minded, like Azael is saying. So many other experiences for a lot of these people have been like going to parties and not having stuff to talk about. But when everybody is a gamer, then everybody feels comfortable and everybody just starts to just let loose. And I guess crazy.
Can I tell the
Yeah, go for
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
That sounds like the perfect
it's
story.
it's not
It's not.
intimidating.
No,
At
it's
least
not
at least the
incriminating.
version that I heard before is not.
No, it's definitely not bad. But I just didn't know if you cared. So
Yeah.
yeah, we were at some curse party or something like that. This was at a BlizzCon, right? And at this point, I don't know. This was pre me joining Riot, so very early days of LCS, probably 2013, 2014, something like
You were
that.
still like a WoW player, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure at the time.
Yeah, I was playing at BlizzCon that year. I think 2014 maybe. Anyway, and so like I'd been watching LCS though, so I knew who Kobe was, and like Kobe was my favorite caster, and I didn't know that he knew who I was or anything like that. So we're at this party, and like I see him kind of just like like across the room, or whatever. He looks over and he just like locks eyes with me, and he goes, Azael! And he just starts running over to me, and I'm like, "What's happening here?" And he literally just runs and just jumps, and I like have to catch him. He's in my arms. It's like, Azael, I fucking love you. I'm like, "What's up, bro?" And like, I'm like,
I
"This is
I
really
had
cool. This is."
I had played a lot of WoW when I was younger, and I'm really competitive. I always try and play, PvP or whatever competitive aspect of any game. And Azael was the best.
Yeah.
And so I was a fan.
Yeah.
It's a gaming
I was
party.
a fan
So
too.
I was like,
I was
know?
I was a fan of Azael as well. Like over on the other side of the world, my friend was like the biggest Sea-Doo fanboy in the history of the universe. He was a Resto Shaman, and he would just like watch every single fucking game over and over and over. And he was like, "You need to watch more Azael." And I was like, it was like Azael, Medivh, and Snutsy were the three that I would like watch religiously to try and get good. But I remember, when I first joined ESL, you guys were reminded me of the first Christmas party I went to. So I'm like this. I had kind of a similar experience of esports as you guys, is like going to the tournaments and stuff. But obviously in America, the tournaments were much bigger. In the UK scene, tournaments aren't that huge. So it was more like iSeries and Epic LAN, and I was doing freelance stuff there. I ended up getting a job with ESL, but it was casting just everything that needed to be cast basically to justify the salary. And pretty much immediately after I joined, like 3 months after I joined, we did a Christmas party, and I was at the UK office. But this was the first year that the UK office had officially been ESL. So they were like, all right, all of the officers from all over Europe are coming to Germany to the main office, and we're doing a massive ESL Christmas party. And so we went over there, and they rented this bowling alley in Cologne. And I remember walking in as like this, like, gooey-eyed, green around the ears esports guy that was just basically is that a phrase? I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say. But like I was like still so new to everything, and I walk in and there's like Joe Miller's over there, D-Man's over there, there's Pansy and Machine and like Momo who casts Call of Duty, and like all of these ESL people that I've like looked up to for years. And then I go to the bar and it's an open bar, and I'm like, can I have vodka Coke? And they give me a bottle of Smirnoff and a bottle of Coke. And I'm like, this is it. This is the career for me. I'm here to stay. Yeah.
Here, take care of it yourself.
Yeah. And at that point, I was like, I'm never leaving. This is it for life now. But yeah, funny. It's crazy how different esports is to like the normal world, especially when you first join, like the stark contrast. Because I was working in Subway before I joined ESL, and it was like Subway and then like freelance gigs on the side. I mean, Dagda, you were working in a bank?
I was working finance, yeah. So that's why I always get jealous when I hear all these stories, because I started in Ireland where we had like 100 of us that would rent a hotel basement, and we'd all play games. It was just people you'd play with online, and then we'd all go out for pints that night. And you'd like, so I would cast the games. So we'd go out for drinks until 3 a.m. But I lived an hour away, well, an hour and a half away from where we were actually casting the games. So I get a bus home for an hour and a half, to sleep for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, to get the bus back in to be in for 9 o'clock that morning,
no.
to then start casting again. So you just cast the whole day. But there was just a bunch of friends that were doing it. Like I didn't really have the mental parties or anything like that until I mean, we did a little bit when I worked with ESL when I first met Joe, but like outside of that, it was just a group of lads that were just, we had a bit of fun. There was maybe 100 to 150 of us that just wanted to try it out. So let's just rent a hotel room and go for it. So it's always crazy when I hear like people going to BlizzCon and all these kind of stuff, because we just don't have that in Ireland. And then you just kind of slowly build up from there.
I think the craziest ones are actually in the early stages of LCS, since there was a new influx of money, and it was the transitional period of the early stages that we're talking about with Azael into big sponsorships, and a lot of these players having a bunch of money, and these teams having team houses. Like we would have team parties and LCS parties, and like lots of players and everything would like, those are the ones that I really miss from moving down here in LA, because it didn't take very long for those to have to get cleaned up real quick, because like you have all the these sponsorships and this money, and you have all these sponsors that want results, and so it got much more strict very quickly, and now that stuff just doesn't exist. So that's why I forget, was it Crown a couple of weeks ago? There was like a Reddit post or something where Crown was like, I can't believe the LCS players go out like partying the night before games and stuff like that. And I was like, that's ridiculous. We haven't done that in years.
You haven't even seen what parties look like.
Maybe the first year, maybe 2013 LCS, I would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, one of these teams, maybe I could see it happening. But I'm like, that's ridiculous, because I would have been invited. I would have known about it.
I know some people were saying that it was maybe like a mistranslation, or maybe like a different opinion of what a party is, you know, because some people, like I think it was maybe Alorm who was like on Optic with him at the time and stuff, was basically saying it was like maybe them having a beer with dinner was considered like partying, because the LCS players do go out for dinner a lot, right? But it's like you go out and you have ramen and you maybe have a beer with your dinner, right? And so like maybe that was his like impression of like, oh, they're out drinking, right? Like that's like partying. But it's pretty tame now, honestly. Like people are so focused, and like Kobe said, it's like as money goes up, expectations go up, right? Like you're not going to get paid $1 million to play in the LCS, and they're not going to let you just like screw off and go out partying all the time and everything. Like these players are grinding, and it's in their contract. They have to grind, that you have to play, you know, X amount of scrim blocks per day, X amount of solo queue games. The coaches and everyone are tracking how many games they have played on all their accounts. And like, it's very full time for these players. Like most of the pros I know have maybe one offish day, and that usually becomes like maybe go see your girlfriend for a bit and then get back to solo queue. Like these guys are grinding.
Was there a guy that you saw who was like just off the walls bonkers, and then he just out of nowhere was just like, all right, cool, I'm settling down, I got to get into this? Like, was there that sudden transition, or was it just kind of gradually people kind of went, no, actually we need to focus on this a little?
Honestly, I think it was pretty quick for everybody, because it was, I don't even remember, maybe it was only the first year, maybe it was the first 2 years, but it was literally as quick as like the start of the next season. Everyone is like, nope, no more parties ever. And I was like, what? Never?
I've got all this alcohol.
You're like having withdrawals.
And then, and that was a long time ago too. Like I'm saying, it's at the very beginning. So it transitioned to that. And then even from that point, then a lot of the teams started moving away from even having like that team house. Because that was what a lot of it occurred. Like a lot of the teams in the beginning had these big team houses. They were all there. It was a perfect place. You know, so I'd say it was a pretty stark transition for everybody. Huh?
I said it just wasn't the perfect place in the team's opinion.
It's true, exactly.
When I lived in the EG house though in Phoenix, we were like not allowed to have like anyone over if they weren't like family or like, your serious like girlfriend or like best friend that you've known forever, you weren't even allowed to have anyone over because they were so afraid that we were gonna get robbed. Because like they would have all these gaming rigs in this house in Phoenix, and sponsors would send all the stuff there. So like we'd have like a garage full of like Intel processors and things like that, and like headsets. There was a lot of money worth of computer parts and and many pallets of Monster Energy drinks and different things. So like people didn't really have at least in that house, people almost never had anyone over, right? I think I had like a friend over one time in the like year and a half that I lived there. If you were gonna hang out with people, you had to like leave a house and you couldn't even tell people the address. So like a lot of teams take it like pretty serious because they're not only stuff like worries about getting robbed and whatnot, but like they don't want fans showing up to the house. They don't want the address to leak. Like weirdos coming or people even just showing up and waiting outside your house with pictures.
With all the stuff from LPL this year, like,
I mean, there's some
want
weird
that.
stuff
You just do not want that.
Some people are really weird. Like even when I lived in Toronto, when I was streaming full time, this is back in like when I was still on EG. I lived on the 7th floor of an apartment building, right? And you can see my window behind me, so you could see like kind of like a cityscape, and like some trees or something like that out my window when I used to stream. And some people literally took the background image and went on Google Maps and like Google Street and stuff in Toronto and scoured the entire city to figure out what the background was. And then from there went in person to like the park and like basically like got the angle right to figure out where my apartment would be. And these people literally figured out like just one day I was streaming and someone was like, do you live in apartment 703 on blah, 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 right? And I was like,
no, definitely
not. Don't live there. No, I don't even live in that area, right? And like, but internally, I'm like, what the fuck, like, and some people started literally like because I would kind of like say some stuff about my day. I wasn't talking about like or super personal stuff, but I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stop streaming. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'll be back later. I'll stream some more, right? So people started waiting at the gyms in my area for me and stuff like that. And I had some people literally like wait inside the gym and were like following me around in the gym as I was working out and just like watching me. And it was like there are some weird ass people out there. So it's like it's definitely really crazy like the lengths people will go to. So I don't blame people for being like really careful about that stuff now because like I thought there was no chance in hell anyone would ever figure anything out from like my window on the 7th floor.
Yeah. And there have been real like scary cases of stuff happening from a lot of the teams too, of people finding out.
Legit,
especially
crazy people.
for high profile ones. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where, especially with the teams and the pro players, like it's not just esports anymore. They're real celebrities now, and the general public is a scary beast to be unleashed upon. Especially if you're performing badly at the time in the standings or whatever, like people get crazy.
It's so hard as well because you've got like, I mean, you're trying to stream your daily life. You've got like unboxing videos. You got all this stuff that's going on, and you leave one thing out, and you're just done for. It just seems so difficult to try and manage all the different avenues that people come in with.
Yeah. I mean, people. It's definitely there's a lot of people have had issues with that, and that's also why like I know a lot of like streamers and stuff have had to move, right, and different things because something get leaked or like teams have had to move and different stuff. So it's definitely pretty serious business now. I mean, like you said too, a lot of like most famous players are like actually more well known than some regular celebrities these days.
Insane.
So it's definitely crazy. Yeah, you have to be somewhat careful.
I mean, especially in China as well. Like someone did like a big poll last year of like the most famous people in China, and Uzi won that poll.
Right? Yeah,
and then Jackie Love was like 4th or something like that. Like in the top 5, there's 2 like LPL players. Not just in terms of esports, but like in terms of fame in China, full stop. It's just absolutely unbelievable. So
Yeah, even looking at like the Vici lads, I think Forge and Ikes, I think were invited to like the Chinese International Film Festival as like celebrities for it. It's just like they're just up there with the likes of every musician
they're
and
not even that
actor
great.
you can think of.
I mean,
Yeah.
LPL is so huge. Like
Yeah.
LPL is insane now, right? It's like
crazy.
10x the other leagues and stuff, and it's just a crazy amount of fans that watch it. So the players become idolized. The players become and I mean, Uzi was in like the Nike ads and stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like these guys are in mainstream.
Jackie Love
mean,
released
yeah,
a
have you seen
Christmas album.
Jackie Love's
Jackie
stuff?
Love released a Christmas
Really?
album. Like, how ridiculous is that?
I didn't know that. That's
He's
really
done
funny.
like I think
Is he any
7
good?
or 8 different.
Yeah, he's actually
shoots.
pretty good. Yeah.
Oh,
Did you see the LPL song as well, where they got like I think there was like 8 players or
Helen,
something
Jackie
who were all
Love.
singing in it.
Yeah.
They did
Oh, I
like a
haven't
whole
seen that.
song. Yeah,
The All-Star song is for LPL is the pro players.
Oh, that's funny.
they're just like highly produced and auto-tuned and stuff. But
Yeah, I watch like a lot of LPL, but I always watch the VODs and then I just skip forward to the games. So I think I miss a lot of that stuff, right? Because it's like when you're trying to power through VODs, speed it up, get to the game start.
we don't necessarily always get it on our broadcast, but we kind of get it in our periphery because of being at the studio and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Jackie Love he was in like 7 or 8 different like
He's
fashion
in
magazine
Chanel,
shoots
Gucci,
over the
like,
course of the last few
yeah.
months. Like
That's like what is it? Is it your All-Star? No, that's award show. The LPL award show. I always see those like fashion breakdowns of like Jackie Love is wearing an $18,000 custom shirt, blah blah blah, and like I'm like, oh my god, like these guys are it's legit like the celebrity tabloid type stuff that you see of celebs here on the red carpet, right?
his outfit is worth a low tier LEC salary. Like that's just mind blowing, honestly.
So even speaking of LEC, sorry to interrupt you, the lads that went over with Grabs, we were talking to them, was like all of the G2 guys are massively known over there. So they actually couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think their hotel got leaked at one stage as well. And they would have fans outside waiting for them because they were they were G2. Like it's not even just the Chinese guys. It's just League of Legends as a whole over there. It just seems to be so much bigger.
And esports in general, right? Like that was something that I never realized, like, how big of a following there was in general, right? Like the most like the closest I ever had to like a true like overwhelming kind of celebrity experience was when they had BlizzCon in China. And I didn't expect anyone to know who I was. And it was actually like crazy. It was like overwhelming because they had the BlizzCon there, and they had never had BlizzCon in Asia at all. It's been in like the Irvine Convention Center literally every year except this one year where they had I guess they didn't even call it BlizzCon, they called it the BattleNet World Championship or whatever, but it's essentially BlizzCon tournament happened in China. And we literally like at BlizzCon it's like there's a lot of people who will come up to you and stuff, but like there's no secret way that you get to the stage or anything. You literally just like hop down off the stage and like walk back to like wherever you're going, right? In China, we would do this, and there would literally be a crowd of hundreds and hundreds of people around. You literally couldn't move, like you couldn't walk, you couldn't get through. It was crazy, like which later people were like, oh yeah, like WoW is just like way bigger in China because Warcraft is huge in China. Like the Warcraft movie was like enormous in China, even though that movie was fucking horrible. Like Warcraft 3 was enormous in China. Dota was enormous in China, right? Like it makes sense. Like that whole universe has always been so popular there, but it just was never something that had even occurred to me that like Chinese people would know me, right? Like these people would come up like you're just getting mobbed by thousands of fans. It was bizarre, and people come up to me and they'd be like, Azael, and a lot of them spoke English or like okay English, right? And I just kind of assumed, okay, well they're just trying to like get a picture with like some random person who's at this tournament, but they'd be like, I watch all your games, and like they'd be telling us about like 6 years ago when you played this team against that. And I'm like, what the hell? I don't remember that. Like it's crazy, man. Esports in China is a big deal for sure.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I want to bring the topic back to more Western esports, and I want to open up the topic of the new LCS format, if that's okay with you guys, because that finally got announced today, and it's slightly different, I think, to what the speculation was, if I'm not mistaken. I'm still a little hazy on the details of exactly how the format works, but I wanted to get your guys' perspective on basically adding more games to the year? Because I feel like there's pretty much only positives, right, to adding more games to the schedule. Because I'm a huge proponent for best of 3, which I know we're probably not going to see in the West for a while because of viewership. But what are your guys' takes on the new format? Like, do you like it? Are there any negatives you can think of? Are there any major positives that people have not really been talking about yet?
I'm really excited for it. I think especially the spring tournament is going to be like a cool way to kick things off. That I think is going to be
Like
pretty
an NA
interesting
Kesper
because
Cup kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. It's like we've never had that, and there's been so much change on the rosters that like this will give us a true idea of who is where to start things off. And I think that is going to be kind of interesting. That is going to be kind of exciting. And even getting to see the debut of some of these like star-studded rosters. There's quite a bit of prize money on the line too. I think the first place team gets like 150K and 50K for charity. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. I'm very excited for that. As far as having more games, like I think it's fun to have more games for fans up to a point, and it's just a balance, right? Because if you go too far, it becomes like overwhelming, right? And the individual games start to feel like they matter less. Like that's something that I felt like happened in StarCraft 2, where I was an enormous StarCraft 2 fan. I cast StarCraft 2, I played StarCraft 2 all day, and it just got to the point where it's like some players are in like 7 team leagues, and like you've seen the same match like 8 times this week between different tournaments, and it just didn't feel as meaningful. So I do think that there is such a thing as too many games. I'm excited that the spring standings are going to matter for summer. I'm excited for the introductory tournament. 3 days, 5 days a week is going to be a lot of games, and hopefully they really are fun. Yeah, I know when we did like double stream best of 3, it felt like a lot. So I think that like having the single stream makes it like more like it's more manageable to follow. Like if you are a big LCS fan, but you can also hopefully like pick and choose and just like okay, if you're a really big TL fan or whatever, you can watch still just their games and everything, and hopefully it feels like it's a pretty good balance, like not too much and not too little.
Yeah. I think one thing that we lost when we went to double stream specifically is like also the feeling of it being a single event, like a community feeling, everybody watching the same game, everybody watching the same stream. So I really feel strongly about the single stream thing. I'm always super excited for tournament formats.
Mhm.
I like the build up to pressure, the build up to a winner, the kind of tension that gets throughout the tournament where teams get eliminated. So I'm really excited for that. I think one of the only things to worry about with the more games, in addition to possible burnout or viewer fatigue, is that one of the things that has always made the LCS so big has been our connection with our players through streaming and content and stuff with fans, and fans really getting to know the players and be fans of individual players. So with Doublelift and Bjergsen retiring, I know like I really want to make another like redouble efforts of push for that. And if you have more full game days, obviously there's less full time for opportunities like that, like streaming, individual content generation, or anything to build fan connection.
Mhm.
That being said, I don't think 3 days of gaming or of games breaks that point. That's just something to keep in mind when I'm kind of judging how much is the right amount, because I think that's really important. I have to say though, like we've wanted to redouble efforts and build on that, and it is hard to stream. It is hard for players to build that up themselves. We have some that are trying to do that, but simply by there being more time is no guarantee that there would be a better next explosion of a super popular streamer or something like that. So
Yeah, I definitely think it's something where it's like it's a combination of factors, and one of the things when you think back at some of the bigger pro league streamers, right? When you think back in the day, it was like I'm a Cutie Pie, Doublelift Bjergsen, Sneaky, Meteos. These are kind of the big names that jump out immediately. But they all kind of started streaming at a similar time, and it was when Twitch was like having its kind of initial massive boom, where everyone and their mums was streaming at the time, and they were kind of the ones that were most successful out of the pros. Whereas nowadays, it's like, even if you're like, if you scroll through the Twitch feed in League of Legends, there are a ton of pro players from EU and NA that are just getting like 150, 200 views or whatever, and nobody even knows that they're streaming. It's way, way, way harder to actually make some headway in the scene these days comparatively to what it was back in the day.
I think part of it too is that the reason for the success of the guys that you mentioned, it's beyond their league skills, right? It's about their personality, and
Yeah.
and they make it entertaining. And I do think that is what, like, I actually follow like every pro that I find on Twitch usually, or at least like bookmark their streams and do things. And it's like, I've watched a lot of those 100 and 150 viewer streams. Generally speaking, they either don't interact at all, or they stream really infrequently. Like there's not a lot of guys who like don't get a lot of viewers who are really interactive and consistent. And that's really what streaming takes. Because streaming is so saturated these days that you have got to be consistent. Consistency is absolutely king right now. Like all the most popular streamers stream on a set schedule incredibly regularly, and it's because of that people get used to just tuning into their stream, right? It's like, all right, you tune in, in the evening, you watch Sneaky. And if he's there every day, you keep doing that. And when Sneaky's not there anymore, then you find another streamer, and maybe he's lost you as a viewer, right? And I think that's one of the things, is that you really kind of have to develop that as a skill set. When I think of an example of a guy like Lorlo started out as like that 100 view guy, but he actually streamed consistently, interacts way more with chat, starts talking about, his thought process and stuff. And now he'll have 1,000 or thousands of viewers and stuff like that. As a guy who's been between Academy and LCS, right? So, you can do it, but it's just that pros have to realize that these days there's so many good people streaming that you have to do more than just be good, right? It's not enough to just like be good. You have to be entertaining. You have to do the other things too. And that's hard.
The only people that can rely on just be good are literally the people that it is an event if you're streaming. Like Faker turning on his stream, you have to be Faker or Caps.
The most famous player in the world.
Like you actually have to be the best. You can't just be really, really good or even 0.1%. You literally have to be like, Caps turns on his stream and he gets 20, 20 easy.
Yeah.
And he can be infrequent because it makes it an event because it's Caps. He's literally the best player in Europe.
Reckless
so
too.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead, Toby.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of people, if you are in that situation, though, it's super difficult for you to come in and then go, well, I've just scrimmed all day. I'm like busting my ass all day. All right, I'm going to switch on the stream and I'm going to be up and I'm going to be happy and cheerful and all that. Like, you just want to, like, you're tired. You don't want to deal with the bullshit. You have some asshole in chat who's like running you through the ground because you missed the CS. You're just like, fuck off. Like, you don't want to deal with that. And I think that's the thing, is that like a lot of people at home won't realize like how draining it is to actually be on camera and stream like that consistently and try and be that personality that you have to be.
Yeah,
that's why I was always so impressed by Sneaky, who would who was actually successful in LCS, successful internationally, grind solo queue like almost no one else, do all the scrim blocks, and then show up and stream every single day.
Yeah, it's actually nuts. Just adding on your thing of kind of like how draining it is. It's funny too, because there's a lot of people that will be in your personal life just for as a caster, and they'll ask me, oh, when are you done with LCS today or whatever, and try and schedule something for like a big block of time right after. And I'm like, well, like I can physically be alive and be somewhere, and I could be there with you, but my brain might be mush. Like talking for that much, and you're basically just freestyling the whole time, right? Like it's really draining mentally.
I mean, there are days where that happens partway through the cast, and you're getting into your last game, and you're like, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. That's definitely true. I think one of the weird things as well about streaming that I noticed is that when you look at the streamers that are successful, and this isn't a rule, but this is like, I think something, and I think like Sneaky is a decent example. I feel like you have to be kind of a people person to an extent to really be able to stream regularly without it like draining on you. I feel like if
For
you're
sure.
like an introverted person, being on camera and actively talking to chat, that is in some ways a socializing event, right? That is socialization. So if you're like extroverted and you want to talk to people all the time, that's probably not so bad. But if you are like an introverted like nerd, which I don't want to break it to anyone, but that's kind of the target demographic of video games. That's really, really difficult at that point, and that can be very draining. So I think that kind of compounds on it, and I think a lot of the streamers are trying to develop more of that kind of outgoing personality. But that's a journey that takes years. That's not an easy fix. So I think that's something that a lot of the players have to develop over time, and that's one thing that comes with practice as well. But it is definitely a journey to make.
For me, like I streamed full time for a while, and one of the things that makes me not feel like streaming now a lot of the time is just that it wasn't even like I don't mind interacting with chat and doing these things, but it's like there's the pressure to be entertaining and be doing something entertaining at all times, even in the game, right? And if I use WoW as an example, because that was what I would stream. When people would tune in my stream, they'd want to see the highest rated arena, right? Like that is why they were tuning in my stream. But like if I just felt like fucking off and doing some transmog stuff or like doing some dungeons, or maybe I just want to do some BGs with my friends or play some low rated arena with like a buddy and help them out. Like that wasn't as entertaining, right? So then you have people complaining about what you're doing, or like your view count goes way down and all these types of things. So like I always felt like there's this pressure to be doing entertaining things at all time, even within the same game. And that for me is what just makes it feel so inherently different. Like if I'm just playing League or I'm just playing WoW by myself, and this like I can play a game and be like, oh, I'm just gonna like play with my dog for 10 minutes after that game, or like go AFK and make a sandwich, and then maybe watch a show, and then I'll come back and play some more. Whereas like you're streaming, you're kind of committed to like X amount of hours of like I will do entertaining thing, please watch me,
Yeah.
which it's just different than just like chilling and playing games.
Yeah, it for sure is. Because I started streaming a couple of times in the off season to try and start back up. And another big difference of not just like just chilling and playing games, like a lot of people now have Discord groups where like you're playing with your friends and talking and stuff, and none of them want to. You don't get the same, just chatting with the homies type of feeling for a lot of people if you're streaming. Like I have a bunch of friends that are super funny and will say all this like random stuff when we're playing, and you'll have all these interactions. But if you stream and you're playing a game with them, it is not nearly as fun. Like people are going to be guarded, and so getting to that point, that's why I think so many more streamers now are doing like streamer plus streamer lobbies, and why like stuff like Among Us is popular, because you got to have other people that are on board with.
Yeah.
I mean, it just reminds me of playing. Like I was playing Arena last night, and both the people I'm playing with are streaming, right? So you finish a game, and then the call is just muted, and they're talking to their stream. I'm just there for myself.
It's just like, oh, what went wrong that game?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what can we do different next game? And no response. I'm like, they're both deafened. Okay.
But that's it. We're living in the future now. This
You can always come carry me,
dystopian video game future.
I'm ready for the arena carry when you want to step down.
All right. Well, let's start talking a little bit about the rosters in LCS, if that's all right, because I really want to get your guys' takes on who you think's going to be good and like how you think, because like I think LCS is one of the biggest like shakeups that we've seen in quite a few years, honestly, when it comes to the rosters. Like I think globally, honestly, there's some really, really exciting rosters, but LCS I think has had some of the biggest moves. What are your guys' takes on like who you think is going to be some of the strongest teams, who maybe some of the underdog teams that people aren't really talking about? Because obviously like Perkz on Cloud9, I think everyone's kind of expecting him to pop off. But are you guys in the camp of just like, oh well, Perkz has arrived, he's just going to dominate the league, or is, because I don't think it's going to be quite that simple. I don't know where you guys sit on that.
I think he's going to do really well. I'll just start, because I know that some people have been like, oh yeah, but switching back and forth between AD carry and mid lane, and does he still have it? I think he's definitely a very big pickup. He's definitely going to be very good. If you go too far the other way though, and like you're saying, oh, he's gonna stomp everything. Yeah, I think that is definitely definitely an exaggeration. I would say for like general groupings, I think most people agree with Cloud9 and Team Liquid, especially with their big spending and the previous performances. These are going to be the real big teams in the league. And then you kind of have another grouping. And you have like TSM with the drama and with all the retiring has gotten really risky. But then they kind of pulled it back with the Sword Art signing where like we went through a roller coaster with TSM. We're like, oh no, they lost Bjergsen, but they got PoE. That's really good. Oh wait, they also lost Double Lift. Oh, but then now they got Sword Art.
Yeah, and everyone thought Sword Art wasn't coming because Double Lift retired, and it was like trying to do the 4D chess.
So like that one is super exciting. There's like drama involved in it. I think that some of the ones, as far as your call out for like under the radar, some of the teams that did get hit with like losing, FlyQuest lost their whole roster. FlyQuest went to Worlds, then lost their whole roster after building up so consistently. Split after split. They're like, we're better. Our brand is better. Our players are better. Our team is coming together. Boom, blows up the entire roster. But on the upside, they get this like package deal with a bunch of the Cloud9 members who Cloud9 members from Academy or from the main team have always been good pickups. And they've also added the excitement of Jose Deodo off of his Worlds appearance, and bringing in a LATAM player also brings that fan base, that excitement. So I think there are a lot of teams that have done well with whatever this offseason left them with. Of course, you have to go at it from different angles. Not everybody can be Cloud9 and Team Liquid and drop in the Perkz signing and stuff like that. But I'm excited for a lot of the different angles, even with some of the teams that had to scramble too.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Azael. Go ahead.
I would just say, like, I agree with what you're saying. There was just two things I had to add. That I did see like a fair bit of like chatter of is Perkz even a good mid laner now? He's an AD, and I'm like, do people not realize he played
he's
spring,
he's
and he got 36 out of the 41 first place votes in LEC for first team All Pro. So like, definitively the best mid laner in Europe, right? Caps wasn't playing mid, so okay, you can make that argument if you want, whatever. But like, it's not like and that was coming off of an entire year of playing bot lane. He was just instantly the best mid laner in Europe, and it wasn't close, right? And that's what like the voting essentially showed us. That's what Spring Split showed us. So, Perkz, I have confidence that he's going to be amazing. There's some people on the other end that are like, Perkz is never going to die a single time this year. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, there are players who are going to stand up to him. There are players that are going to challenge him.
He's going to
lose lanes. Like, things are going to happen, but I think he's going to be great. And I'm really excited to see, how well he does. The other team that I'm kind of interested about is 100 Thieves. It's basically Someday plus Golden Guardians. And I think I was really sad when I initially had heard that like Golden Guardians was basically losing their whole roster. I'm like, well, that sucks. Like, this team was actually pretty cool in playoffs. They took out TSM the first time around. They had, a lot of development with the Huhi plus FBI and bot lane. Like, they became like the best laning duo in the league. They had gotten really good, and things felt like they were really moving in a strong direction for this team. So I'm excited to see how they do with 100 Thieves. I think Zix is a great coach, and Someday now has a stronger supporting cast around him. So I think that's a team that could do some damage. And it's like, besides that, I kind of really agree with Kobe as far as like, okay, there's these groupings, right? Like the clear favorites at the top of C9 TL. And then everyone else, I think, has to be something special. Like, your cohesion is better, your strategies are better, your coaching is better, because on paper, those two teams just are so much stronger, right? They outspent everyone by a lot, besides maybe TSM with this crazy Sword Art deal. But now TSM has Lost in there and not Double Lift. There's like, who knows how that's going to work and everything. But I'm really, really excited to see how it goes. And I hope that some of these kind of next grouping of teams can rise up and compete with TL and C9.
What games are you most scared to cast? I would say later in the season, Golden Guardians. That could be those could be really rough. I like that, we're getting some new names and they're taking chances and they're like, hey, you know what? We have no money, so we're going this route. I feel like it could get scary though. If we have a late season Golden Guardians versus Cloud9 or something like that, might be over quick.
That could be tough. I mean, I will say though, like Golden Guardians basically came out and said like, hey, look, we didn't want to lose these players. We didn't have the money, right?
Yeah,
Like, their budget got cut and everything. So like, I will say I am happier that they are going with like a bunch of rookies and new players and trying something instead of just like getting the cheapest veterans that they could find, right? Like I'm more excited about it. But yeah, I mean, if you watch 8 weeks of them getting slammed, then like you're going to be less excited for their game potentially in week 9. I mean, I always think it's hardest to cast the 2 bottom teams, right? Like if you're saying it's a top team versus a bottom team,
because it's not over as quickly.
Yeah, well, and even if it's a stomp, you can still talk about like it's week 9. There's some playoff implications or whatever for the top team, and you can focus more on their story, right? If it's 2 teams that are eliminated from playoffs and have both done very poorly all year long, then it's harder to have exciting things to say.
The battle for the wooden spoon.
Dag does in the same boat as you there, but me and Lyric love those games. I revel in the Fiesta, man. Like I just bury me in it. I'm more than happy to just watch the worst
The problem is if it's not a Fiesta and if it's not like action, the problem is if they both like hunker down like and don't
like
want
20-minute
That's BLG and LNG. That's why I hate BLG LNG. What'll happen is BLG will look good maybe in one of these games and they'll win and you're like, that's the BLG we'll expect. And then you go into the next 2 games of the series and BLG have shit the bed. They're not doing anything for the next 20 minutes. And then LNG doesn't know what to do. Like, it's just the entire game. It's just the 2 of them staring at each other lovingly across the rift, but too scared to actually interact with each other.
It is playing horrific. To not lose, right?
Yeah.
That's the worst.
But this is what Joe and Lyric just live for. Like, they love these games. And I'll be talking
I don't
to
love
Lyric.
the boring games. We love Rogue Warriors.
I kill games. Those can be fun. If teams are going to scrap, you can have some fun because then you just talk about the game, right? Yeah. You talk about what's happening on the screen. But when there's no kills, everyone's eliminated from playoffs, and no one's doing anything, those are the real stinkers. Those are the hard games to cast.
I think that's maybe less common in LPL, just because it's LPL a little bit. Like there are a couple of teams that do nothing, but I would say like maybe 14 out of the 17 teams are pretty proactive. In good ways or bad ways. Like
even if you look back as far as spring, like V5 that we had at that stage, we're still super interesting to watch because you're hoping they would win a game.
Actively running it.
But they were actually quite fun to watch.
In summer, there were beasts. Moles.
Yeah, in summer it was nuts. Yeah. Moles, beast.
Moles on hit Nico bot.
Beast, PP God. Obviously, Church has been arisen around him. But like there's a lot of fun there. But even when you look at like Rogue Warriors, who weren't one of our best teams, like you still were like, they could probably win this. Like there's a couple of games against Invictus Gaming that literally came down to Nexus rushes. Like there was several games that were crazy exciting, and even if they weren't the top team, you'd still get a decent series. But there was like 1 or 2 where you'd just be sitting there going, what am I doing with my life? Like OMG. I could be doing so many.
OMG is the team for me that's just like every time I'm casting OMG last year, it's just like, God, what the hell do I talk about? There's like some players on here that used to be exciting, but they kind of just aren't anymore. Like they don't really have a clear identity. They don't really like they're inconsistent as all hell. So you don't actually know what to expect from them. You don't even know what to expect from them in terms of picks because the players play different shit every single fucking game. Like, I don't think they know what they're doing. How the fuck am I meant to know what they're doing? And it's like, I don't know. Like when there's no expectation and no identity to a team, I find it really difficult to get excited about that because it's like, I like to see the juxtaposition of different identities and like different styles of teams going against each other. But when you don't know what the style even is going to be, it's kind of like, I don't know. And then you're disappointed regardless of which style shows up with OMG. I don't know.
I'm curious to see what your take is on this, Kobe, because we had Papa Smithy and Monte Cristo on a while ago, and they said that these were the games that just weren't interesting that were the most brilliant to cast, because they do the classic LCK thing, which is we're into the podcast mode. We're just going to talk about Star Wars or whatever the hell else is on our mind, and we're just going to go completely off track. Like, what's your take on it? Are you like excited that you just kind of get to podcast these games, or you're like, no, I want action, I want kills, I want to actually get into the beefiness of this?
Well, I definitely like action, and I definitely like kills. I also just like anything that could be funny in the game, though. So like, even if there is some bad or poor play aspect of the game, like if it goes to the circle where you can turn around to be comical, I actually really enjoyed that as well.
Didn't you actually do the Dignitas one where they lane swapped and they both
the Rift Herald?
The Rift Herald play?
Yeah.
I also did the 86 minutes game of complexity versus somebody. And eventually, it's just so bad. It goes so long. You get to this point where everybody, even watching, is getting delirious, and you just have fun in that way, kind of thing. Stitch has joined. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
with the doggo stream
now. He's so fuzzy. He's just like a big ball of floof now. It's great.
Oh, he's adorable.
Good boy. He's a good boy.
I'm one of those people that just my brain turns to mush when there's a dog. All I can think about is the dog.
That's me too. Like I'm the kind of person that like I'll be walking somewhere with Joanne, we like see a dog, and we like cross the street to go see the dog.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
Perfect.
And I go into dog voice. Just
I don't trust people who don't do that. You gotta have a dog voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The best thing though is when you're talking to Munch and you're in the middle of a conversation and you'll see a dog, because you're not sure what's happened. It's just that split second of like, and then what we can do is if we relook at this and oh my god, he's so cute, and you're like, what?
Like sometimes that has to be done. It's
it does.
It's out of my control.
Dogs take priority. That's true.
Yeah.
I heard you guys talking about some of the long games. That was like there was that 1C9 game at Worlds or whatever where like everyone was memeing Medios for like learning Lee Sin during the game or whatever, and it was like a 70-minute game or something, and then he had like a good kick at the end and they won the game off of it. And it was so funny because it was like such a long game, and I didn't even really know like what to say at the end, and I was just like kind of like it was like a hype moment. It was like a finish. I think it was at Worlds and like C9 won, so like I was pretty excited, and I was like, "Damn, like what an amazing game," or something like that. And I was getting roasted by the fans for being like, "This fucking idiot thinks that game is amazing. Dude, what a moron!"
I've had so many casts like that where I come off of a game like that was fucking amazing or that was fucking garbage, and then I realized on Twitter the reaction to that game is the polar opposite of like my emotions from that game. Like sometimes it'll be like an absolute just the worst game you've ever seen, and then everyone's like, "That was really exciting." It's like it's only exciting because they just chose to lose the game 5 times in a row, taking it in turns. Like, and then there's other times where it's like I don't know. Yeah, I've had that before though, where it's like you come off the game and you're just. Your read of what happened is just totally different to what everyone else is thinking.
Well, sometimes it's just like reacting to the moment, right? Like a game can be a real stinker and then like has a banger ending.
Yeah.
And you're like hyped up and you're like, oh, let's go. This game was sick. And everyone's like, what about those last 40 minutes though, where nothing happened?
Yeah. It's okay. We trained in season 2 for this, where the most exciting thing for the first 25 minutes was who would break the farm record at 20 minutes. That was like all we lived for back then. So we're good with the slower games.
I'm still trying to get used to the slower games, like because for LPL a huge amount of them are just so fast paced that like when you do end up, because I end up doing the JDG semi-finals, I think it was back in spring, and it was like 32-minute first blood, and I was like, what is going on here? Like it was really cool, it was nice macro play, but I was just like every time they went to interact I was waiting for a fight. We had the same one with the we tried to do fight night for one of the series, myself and Munch, where we'd like built it up on the desk. We came in, we had like ties around our head, we'd like our sleeves rolled up, we're like, this is fight night. We introduced who was it, Rookie and I can't remember who the other guy was.
It was LGD versus IG.
Yeah, LGD versus IG. We had introduced Shie and Rookie, we had like they weigh 4,000 e-pounds. They've got like this is their fighting style. We had like an entire UFC fight card drawn up for these guys, and then we get in and like nobody was doing anything. It was like the worst, the worst early game we'd seen. So yeah, it's hard when you've kind of built these things up, especially if you're going in off of a story meet going, this is going to be action paced. You built the fans up, and then there's just nothing. And I think that's the hardest part in a lot of these situations is looking at like the expectations you built for fans and thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be great, this is going to be cool, and you're just like, oh, I've got nothing.
our all-star game where we have Faker versus Rookie, Zach versus
Jesus. Zach Malzahar.
Yeah, we're like,
was
oh
coming
my
off of,
god, we
like,
get to
the
see
Collie
Faker
meta,
versus Rookie.
Yeah,
That was actually like the biggest disappointment for me ever. It was like actually such an exciting meta too, where every game was, you know, it was like a Kali, Silas, Aurelia, like all these skill-based matchups. It's coming to All Stars. Maybe we'll get a Zed. It'll be an absolute banger. And we got fucking Tank Zach against Malzahar. It's like,
Got him.
It's like, come on, guys. Yeah, we had a similar thing with when we had Rookie versus Knight. I think it was during the regular season, or it might have even been playoffs. And it was just like they were just taking it in turns to play Galio versus like Oriana or something. And it was just like, okay, push the wave, go somewhere else. Never 1v1, never interact properly with each other. It's like, we have built this mid lane matchup the entire year. Like, this is all we've talked about in the mid lane is these two players. And you're just not even going to play against each other. It's just breaks my heart. And obviously, it's a competition, right? They're playing what's good. Galio was incredibly good at the time, but it's still just like disappointing when you don't get to see that 1v1 that everyone wants to see.
Just kind of moving off of this topic though a little bit and moving into more kind of the casting end of things is like, what was a kind of a defining moment for you in your casting careers? Because obviously you guys kind of are looked at as legends. Like, was there like an in-game moment that you went, holy shit, this is it? Or was it a piece of advice you got? Or what was kind of something that helped shape you guys? Because I know this is going to sound like I'm kind of pandering, but like way back when I started casting, I actually listened to one of your interviews, Kobe, and you were like, hey, I just want to be the guy sitting on the couch who it's like your friend who just knows more about the game than you. And that was very much what stuck with me for a lot of my casting. And I was wondering if you had something similar that you kind of took and shaped the style that you wanted to bring to your.
So when I first started casting the online TSM tournaments, there was no League of Legends casting, so it didn't exist. And that's kind of why Reggie asked me, is because I was a pro player. I was basically the first retired or first kicked pro player. And so when I started casting the games, I came into it as like I was actually a lot of like pro player kind of making jokes and making fun of plays and mistakes I see in the other pro players of like my peers and stuff. And so it kind of molded from that of like just kind of having fun while informing type of style. But then as I joined the LCS and we started to craft what we wanted League of Legends casting to be like, we had tons of meetings. By the way, when it was me, Jat, Riv, and Freak, the original LCS casters, we would meet with our caster manager, and we had all kinds of meetings about what kind of structure we wanted, what were important elements that you want to build up to, what really is important as far as setting up fights, as far as looking into the future, predicting things.
And what did that look like?
That.
Was that like dragging in information from like NBA or NFL, or how did you kind of go about that?
Jat was very strong in watching sports commentators. Like he really liked watching sports commentators and analyzing from that, and as well our caster manager. And then we also, not just from traditional sports though, from other games, like I'd watched a lot of like fighting game stuff from Melee and fighting games and stuff like that. And so trying to bring other types of esports in, Counter-Strike obviously was super big. I hadn't watched too much StarCraft, but obviously Tasteless and Artosis, everybody knows them. and we had Freak knows a lot of StarCraft casting and stuff like that. So we tried to bring it in from a lot of areas and come up with what are good elements, what are bad elements that we can actually just get rid of, and build some structure around it. Then we started having classes like improv classes. We had where we would have even vocal coaching. We did all kinds of stuff, like whatever we can think of to try and make it entertaining, try and make it flow better, examine it from a lot of different angles. I think one of the big moments that happened for me later on, while I was pretty deep into casting in 2015, was the MSI CLG, coming back and having this actual comeback from an unwinnable game. All inhibitors down, and down, like North America already had the same stigma attached to it. Never win anything, trash region, always disappoint. And to have that big giant comeback from like nothing happening and getting so exciting, just added another level of like the emotional attachment to games and competition, and that sort of I guess genuine type of thing that you can't force. Like it has to be something that happens and comes to you basically in the game. But I guess those are all just different components and little pieces that we've tried to think about in the different different stages.
Starting out casting for me was very different, I think. I mean, League of Legends and just LCS in particular is like much more like defined in like caster roles and like what they want from you, what they don't want from you, all that sort of stuff. Like all my earlier years of casting was just like sit down, cast the game, right? Like that's about the instruction you got. So
Start
there wasn't,
talking.
yeah, exactly. Like, maybe there would be like some little like toss that they wanted you to give some sort of specific information. But besides that, it was basically just got plopped in front of a camera and like talk for 10 hours. And so it was very different, right? Because casting WoW, casting StarCraft, casting Hearthstone, there was no defined roles. So like I actually in WoW was much more known for like my play-by-play, right? And that was like what kind of like got me known was play by like my play-by-play moments and that sort of stuff. And same thing with StarCraft, honestly, to be honest. But like when I came into League, and it wasn't in those games that like I didn't do any analysis. It was just that like everyone kind of did everything, right? Like, I would just start play-by-playing and then the game would end and I would like talk about things, or maybe I would in my play-by-play be saying like, oh, they just got this trinket, so now they're gonna do this next thing, and then they're gonna CC that guy and then they're gonna kill him, right? And like people are like, wow, he knew that was gonna happen. But when I came into League, it was like very different because there's very clearly defined roles. They were basically saying like, okay, you're an ex-pro, so like you should be a color caster. Like that should be your role. That makes sense. You understand the pro mindset. Like you played a lot of years of that, so like you can dig into that more. So the first couple of years for me, like in LCS, was definitely an adjustment period. Because it was like there was all these things I was used to doing that it was like now that's not your job, right? Like shut the fuck up. Like the play-by-play
Hand
is
it off.
talking. The play-by-play is talking now, right? And trying to like find the balance there, I think can be tough. Like I get excited in the games. Kobe obviously does too, right? And like sometimes you like want to say something during play-by-play or something's happening. And I think finding the balance there is sometimes tough. But for me, I didn't have any like eureka moment about like how to cast or anything like that. I would say that like I my favorite casters for the longest time were Tasteless and Artosis. I watched a tremendous amount of StarCraft. I watched Brood War. I watched SC2. I would literally watch 100% of the GSL VODs. Like I was really into StarCraft and played nonstop. And like I would watch all of Code A, all of Code S, every single game, no matter what. And I loved listening to them cast because it was like two buddies, right?
Yeah.
And them casting together, kind of made you feel like you were part of like the group, which I always thought was really really cool. And for quite a few years in WoW, I got to cast with like one of my really good friends who got into casting, and like that was more what we were trying to be, right? Like was just more like let our personalities and like us making fun of each other and stuff kind of like carry the cast just through like being entertaining. And that's something that like I've always kind of really enjoyed being able to like, but that takes like comfort, right? That takes really knowing someone well, like what lines can you cross, what lines can't you cross, like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, like what's going to come off well or play well with those players, that caster. And like that's something that I think is really cool with LCS, is that it was the first time in my life I actually got to like work with the same people all the time, like event in, event out, and really try to like work on improving things together. And I feel like I have a different style with a lot of these different casters now. Like depending on who's doing play by play, like my cast will change because I want to like amplify what they're doing and their strengths, and try to help to work well with that to create a good cast. When I cast Hearthstone or when I cast StarCraft and all of these things, it's like you show up to an event, you sit down with someone, maybe you talk for 2 minutes, and then you start casting. It's like you're never going to see this person again, probably. So it is very different. And I got to like for the first time actually like practice casting and like do these things, so and get feedback. So I never really had like a real eureka moment other than just like I enjoyed this and it was something I was going to work at. I would say like my favorite moment casting ever by far was just casting in Toronto, in the Air Canada Center, because like I've been in esports literally my entire adult life, and my family had never been able to come to an esports event because there's like nothing in Canada, and they couldn't really travel to go to something. So it was like having this huge League of Legends event. Like growing up, we would sometimes go to like basketball games in the Air Canada Center with my family. Like a few times we would like drive up to Toronto and like get some tickets and watch a game. And so it was like we were back to this place that I'd gone with my dad and everything, and my brother and my mom, and they were all there, and some of my good friends were there, and it was like being back in Canada in this big thing with my family there was just like the most amazing feeling ever. And I got to do the opening analyst desk, and I can't remember what I said, but I was just like I just said something along the lines of like, feels so good to be home. And like the crowd just like popped off, and I literally was like gonna cry, right? I was just like, I was just like, oh my god, I was completely overcome by emotion. And it was, yeah, that's I think forever gonna be my favorite moment in casting. I don't think anything can ever top that.
What do you kind of guys see as like the future? What does that hold for you? Because I mean, there was always, as I heard you guys talking about your past and pro career, like I could kind of see there was a little bit of longing there to go back. But I mean, maybe that's not the case. But like, is there something like, do you want to just stick with casting as long as you can? Like, do you want to see it go into the long term where you're just like, look, I'm just going to keep going with this as long as I can? Or what do you guys kind of hope for the future?
I mean, for me, like as far as like the longing of like pro stuff, like the way I always describe it is that as a pro, I had much higher highs, but I also had much lower lows, and the day to day sucks ass. It's bad. Like it really is, right? Like, the only thing I cared about winning by the end was like the world championship. Like I'd won everything else a bunch of times and stuff. Like I wanted to win more world championships, right? And so it's like if that's your mindset, it's like you're literally dedicating your entire year to this one event, and then some small minuscule thing goes wrong at the event and you lose, and now you just like want to die. Like your whole year just feels like it got thrown in the trash. Like that to me is pro gaming. And like when you win, it's like euphoric, right? Kobe said it was like the best feeling in his whole life when he won, WCG. It is this like euphoric feeling, right? Because you've dedicated everything you have into getting to this place, and you win, and it's paid off, right? And it feels that you've been validated. It feels incredible. When you lose, it feels horrible. And casting is much more even keel. There's high moments, there's low moments, but I would say that it's much more even keel than pro gaming. So like I don't know that like I want to go back to being a pro. I don't think that it's realistic. I don't think that I ever would. But like, am I going to cast the rest of my life? I don't know, right? Like I enjoy casting. I've always kind of just like followed what I enjoy, and done pretty well with it in esports. And I've cast a lot of different games. So like to me, if like 10 years down the line, League of Legends is gone as an esport, like I don't think that has to be the end of the road, because it's like my fourth or fifth game already. As far as like would I do other things, like maybe, I have some interest in doing the team side. Like teams will reach out to I think a number of casters. We've seen a number of casters move over to coaching positions and GM positions and stuff. Like that's definitely something that's out there. But for me at least, it would have to be like, for me to want to do a GM or coaching position, it would have to be like the perfect opportunity, right? Like it would have to be like the right team, like the right salary, the right security, like all these things would have to come together, because I do think that those types of jobs are like so all consuming, right? Like it becomes your like existence completely. And you know, I wouldn't want to do it unless I was ready to sign up for that, because I wouldn't want to like half-ass something like that. It's just not really who I am. So I don't know. Like you know, I'm happy casting. I would love to keep casting, but you never know what the future holds.
Yeah, I've talked to several teams about both coaching and GM positions, and literally from one of the coaching ones, um, my response was like, yes, like I am very competitive as a person. So, and right now, I do feel like I would really love to be able to have that full commitment to one team, because, like Azael was saying, you do like there is no comparison to winning and getting that feeling and being the best, but there is a huge possible downside. So, um, it can take a big toll, and you really want it to be perfect. Um, to his point about you need a lot of conditions to align, one of them would also, for me, one of my responses in the talk was, all right, you know, I am interested. Like I would want to do this, but I would not want to do it and be worse than Jat, because he just made that move. Like I can't now move to a worse team and be a coach than Jat. Like I'm gonna be the second like
Seen on
shittier.
Kobe
I'm the
confirmed.
shittier version. No, like so I need you to guarantee me that I have full commitment. I have this. I have this. I have this. So that
You
I
need
can
the
do
$8
it.
million
I can,
roster to one
so
up.
I can do it
Yeah.
my way, and I can win, because I'm not going to make that jump if I'm not going to win. Okay, because that's the pull of it.
Yeah.
And there's like no
The
job security in
is the
coaching and
competitive side.
GMing and stuff.
Exactly.
Like people can every year, right? Like as long like Kobe and I have cast for a long time. If we continue to work hard at casting, we should have a job casting, right? Like it feels like like if you stop putting in effort and you're not working and prepping and really, you know, putting in effort, of course you could get fired, right? But I feel like we're at a point where if we continue working hard and working at it and trying to improve as we do, then we have a job at LCS, right? Like I am not thinking I'm going to get fired next year, right? As long as I'm doing the same that I'm doing now. Whereas like coaching and GMing and those types of positions, as much as like there is that allure of like being more invested, right? Like you're going to be living and dying by the results of a team, and that can be exciting. There also is the reality that it's like sometimes things outside of the coaches or the GMs or whatever control can happen, right? Maybe your team loses their budget, all of a sudden your team sucks. You get canned, or maybe the players don't like each other, that turns out, and there's, you know, disagreements, and there's always things that happen that can be kind of beyond people's control and sometimes unforeseeable. Even great teams can fall apart. You know, Reaper is the most successful, kind of like most well-respected coach in North America ever. His team went from like absolutely slamming spring when and undefeated in the first half of summer to they don't make worlds and he doesn't have a job, right? And that was like the best coach. Everyone said he was the best coach. So you never really know what's going to happen, but it does feel like things can kind of change very quickly, not only for pros but also for coaches and GMs and stuff too.
One other thing I like about casting and especially the position with LCS is that with LCS we are so involved in all these different aspects that you get variation. I'm not just cast. We're also working with content generation. I'm also working with directors extremely closely, producers extremely closely, like all these different aspects of creating a show or a form of entertainment. So I'm interested in a lot of these different little pieces of it, and I could see doing a different one of those pieces, but I don't think that I'll be leaving, you know, competitive gaming, esports. Like I would still want to do something in this
Mhm.
genre, along these lines. I've already, you know, done engineering and done desk job, and yes, I still like you have the degree, it doesn't expire, but it's not something that I would want to go back to. And it also is like, you know, you don't have current, you don't keep up with current, you know, happen followings and stuff. And I just
And
feel
you'd be
like there's,
starting at square one, right? You'd
yeah,
be
I have so much invested in this industry that something along these lines.
Yeah,
would
I
definitely
think
be
I'll
the
be in
play.
esports for my entire life for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't know what it'll be, right? Like I always thought that I would be in like WoW forever, and then that WoW esports kind of went downhill and like didn't get sponsored there, and then I thought maybe it was StarCraft and things that it's like stuff happens, right? I am a realist in that I know that it's like this is my fourth or fifth game, may not be my last game, right? Like it may be. And if it is, that's awesome, right? Like if I can cast this until I'm 60 or 70 or whatever, and I'm just like an esports grandpa, Kobe and I are on the desk holding it down, for like the 50th year. That's cool. But you never know what's going to happen, right? Esports, like there's not a lot of games that have really stood the test of time, fully. So maybe League will do it. Some other games have, like Counter-Strike, I would say is like the closest to kind of doing it. Like obviously StarCraft has been around for a really long time, but like hasn't been able to like maintain the popularity over the last quite a few years. Counter-Strike I think had a dip in popularity, but like with CS:GO, the majors and everything, it's huge, and that game has been around forever. So it's possible, but you just don't really know.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at as well. Is like I would love to do this like forever theoretically, right? And I've been a producer in the past as well. I had a couple of years sort of not quite away from casting, but casting and then mostly producing. But like the thing deep down in my heart is like I'd love to be that guy that's on the desk in 50 years time that's got gray hair and like everyone knows them. They're like the dinosaur. Nobody really knows where they came from. They're just the guy that like they say something and everyone just automatically they like compare it to a game that happened 20 years ago or to a player that was around years and years ago, and like everyone just believes them kind of thing. I'd love to eventually be that figure, but that's obviously like a long way off. But I think
we'll come back. We'll come back in 40 years for Bevvies and the boys again.
Yeah, the 40-year reunion.
Yeah.
With that though, I think we should start to wrap up this episode. So I want to give it over to you guys one last time to do any shout outs to stuff you're doing. If there's like a dive episode coming up that you want to shout out, or if you're doing YouTube or Twitch, now is your opportunity to give that a yell.
Well, we did our last dive episode for this year, but we are going to have one at the beginning of next year before LCS starts. I'm not sure when it's going to be, but it'll be good, and you can follow our Twitters for the announcements where we do most of that. Mine is Esports Kobe. Azael's is Azael. Is there something else? Ride Azael.
Ride Azael. Yeah, there you go.
And I started streaming on
Twitter.
Twitch.
Not a true friend. Not a true.
No, definitely fake friend, 100%.
Well, see, I didn't know because a lot of us took Riot out of our Twitter handles, so I didn't know if it was just Azael or if you still have a Riot in there. But he's still Riot.
Yeah, I'm still Riot.
And then my Twitch is just Kobe on Twitch.
I got nothing. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you to my wonderful wife who's waiting for me, for waiting for me, and yeah, that's about it. I'm excited for next year, and yeah.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Joanne.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Dagdo, anything you want to shout out before we close out the show?
No, just a massive thank you to the two guys for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been great to actually talk to you two.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on. This is the last episode of the year. So check it out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts as well, and on YouTube, and obviously on Twitch. We're going to close out the show. It's been Munchables, it's been Dagda, it's been Kobe, and it's been Azael. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you guys in 2021 for more Bevvies of the Boys.